It's KNAC.com, the loudest.com on the planet. The moment that you guys have been waiting for has arrived. How are you doing today, Tom?
Doing very good. Hi.
How are you? You're doing pretty good?
Absolutely, yeah.
Good, glad to hear it. So you're calling KNAC.com today, and basically the reason is we want to talk to you. We want to talk to you about this piece of art that you've created. Are you morbid into the pandemonium of Celtic Frost?
That's art, huh?
Hey, everything's art, isn't it? I mean, seriously?
Well, I would never go so far. I just love writing, and I had to put this down, of course. But I'm very careful in what I label my work. I let other people do the judgment on that.
Okay, I can dig that. Now, first off, I want to talk to you about a brief history of the band. All right?
Right.
The band Celtic Frost started in what year? 84?
1984, June 1984.
June 1984 in Switzerland.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, how did you guys all meet? Can you tell me a little bit about how it became about?
Well, both Martin and me, who formed the band together, we came from neighboring tiny little farm villages of like maybe 3,000 people, and we were the only like maniacs there listening to that kind of music. So it was a coincidence, but on the other hand, it was also very easy to kind of know that there's another guy like that in the other village. So us meeting was kind of, it had to happen. There wasn't too many people like that around. And once we met, of course, we knew we wanted to try to play some music ourselves.
So you guys got together, you started playing some music, and just basically went from there, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so the band was together for a total of 8 years.
9 years. We were together from 1984 till 1993.
Oh, okay. And you guys released 6 albums?
6 albums, and I don't know how many EPs and stuff around that.
But those were 6, like, full studio albums.
Exactly.
And the rest, you had some stuff in between. Now, I had heard somewhere that, from a friend of yours, actually, that you are the proprietor of the name Death Metal.
I wonder what kind of friend of mine would say something like that. But, well, the story goes, we had a fanzine in the early 80s, a little underground fanzine, way before we played music together, Martin and me and some other friends, and we called that fanzine Death Metal. It was like a little photocopied affair, like a lot of the later big magazines were at the time. And then later, when Martin and me played in our first band together in Hellhammer, on the only Hellhammer release, the EP, we had this motto on the back of this EP that said only death is real, and I think it was things like that got us associated very early on with death, with the term death metal. But the absurd thing is we ourselves never saw ourselves as death metal. We just played hard music. We just played the music we loved. We never wanted to be put in just one box. And later, of course, Frost went much further than just one type of music.
Yeah, I understand that as well. You had mentioned your first band, Hellhammer.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about how Hellhammer came about, and then the demise of it as well.
Well, Hellhammer came about. That was basically the band Martin and me first founded, like what we talked about earlier when we met, and we decided we wanted to try to create some music like that too. Now, us being total bloody beginners at that time, we could hardly play an instrument, and we certainly weren't good enough to translate the many ideas we certainly had into adequate music. So what we ended up doing was copying the bands we liked, which at the time was like Raven and Venom and stuff like that. And to be quite honest, Hellhammer was very much a clone of these bands, and only when we became musically better and we realized how you had to do it to get your own ideas into music, that's when we became frustrated with that very limited vehicle, and we left the band and later joined again to form Frost, which really was the first proper band we were in.
Now, I had also heard that we were talking about this whole death metal, the word in itself and how it formed, and I had also heard that the reason around the name death metal was because you guys were on a Noise Records compilation a long time ago, and you guys had a lot of lyrics and a lot of song titles with the word death in it, and somebody had asked you, and you said death metal.
The story goes like this. The record company wanted to do a compilation album, and they were struggling for a title, and the owner of the company had then tentatively titled the compilation Black Mass. And even at that very early time, that must have been like 1983 or something like that. Even at that early time, Martin and me found this just so unbelievably cliched. And we weren't a satanic band or anything like that. And we said we don't want to be on this compilation if it has such a silly title. And the owner said, "Well, do you know a better title?" Kind of provoking us. And as I said, we had this fanzine called Death Metal with a logo and everything. So we said, "Look, why don't you call it at least Death Metal? That's a little more open than this Black Mass thing." And he said, "All right, but we're going to have to change all the artwork and everything." And we said, "We have a logo here," and we couriered it to Berlin at that time, and they decided to accept it. So the rest is history. The compilation was called Death Metal. It had the same logo as our little, totally unknown fanzine, and it probably helped to shape that term Death Metal. And it's very good because at least none of the bands that were on this compilation had anything to do with like black metal or satanic thing or anything. So Black Mass would have been totally ludicrous as a title.
Now, in addition to coining the term death metal, I hear that the artwork that a lot of the more modern death metal bands have is, the font of their logo is very unlegible type of a font, and I forgot the name of the exact font, but most of them go there and they use that exact font. I heard you guys were also the proprietors of that as well.
Well, in the early days, we just tried to have a lot of designs in our work that weren't necessarily used before, and we struggled very hard to find whatever we could to be original. And I suppose a lot of fans who later turned into musicians probably liked what we were doing, and this might be a cruel comment, but it'd be probably better if they would create their own ideas like we did back then than to like copy from Frost.
That's exactly what you guys did, I think, was a major part of what Celtic Frost did was you guys were more original than anybody else, and either you got it, you didn't get it, or you didn't want to get it. And that was the difference between the mindset back then and now. It's like if a band comes out now and they're very original, they get the props. And back then, when a band came out and they were incorporating all these different types of genres of music into one, it was looked at kind of weird, and you guys had to struggle with that.
Oh, it was an endless struggle. You're totally right about that. The market is so much more open now. Now, whatever weird thing you put on an album, you will find a market, you will find a label that puts it out, and it will be accepted. But back then, if you didn't fit a very narrowly defined box, you had no chance of being accepted, or you had to struggle very hard and fight very hard and promote it very hard to at least get some kind of platform. You're totally right about that.
And you guys had to do that, and you guys did struggle.
Well, you said before we were one of the most creative bands and everything. I'm rather more humble. We just tried to do what was inside of us, and we didn't set out to like change the world or anything. We just felt what we liked already in music that was already there. Why would we go copy it? We just wanted to do our own thing, and our motto was always create, don't copy. And we really didn't think about the larger implications of all of this. We just wanted to do what was inside of us and try not to copy what was there already, which we thought other bands were doing better anyway.
That's an interesting way to look at it. It also, years later, after these CDs had come out and they were successful, but they weren't as successful as they were years later when people were like, "Oh my God, that was like the best CD to come out of the time," and people look back on it, and it was like more popular later than it was before, and that's an accomplishment in itself. You guys were way ahead of your time, and I'll give you props for that.
Well, thank you very much.
Once again, if you're just now tuning in, Tom Fischer of Celtic Frost on the line with us, and now let's start discussing about your new book, which is the reason why you're calling it. Just wanted to do a brief history on the band itself. The name of the book is Are You Morbid? Into the Pandemonium of Celtic Frost. And, okay, you wrote this book, so obviously you have a lot to say, all right? When did you start writing this book?
Well, maybe I just think I have a lot to say. That's up to the reader to judge.
Maybe you just said the same thing over and over and over.
No, not exactly, but Well, I always loved writing. I loved writing for as long as I have loved playing music, and then I have written in the past. Obviously, I used to be a fanzine writer, and then later I wrote some articles freelance-wise, and I started researching this book actually when Celtic Frost were still together. I obviously didn't remember all the details of Frost's existence because I never kept a diary or anything like that. So what I did was in 1991 I began about 3 years of very serious research as if I was an outside writer. I contacted a lot of people who worked with Frost. I talked to all the band members and a lot of people in the industry, and I gathered as much information as I could. And at the tail end of this research I began actually writing on the book, and I finished it like in the mid-1990s. And in the second half of the 1990s, I rewrote the book entirely because I was not yet entirely happy with it.
Okay, so what was the driving force inside you that made you write this book?
On one side, it was because I knew there was a lot of interesting things in Celtic Frost's story that would also apply to a lot of other bands on one side, and also a lot of fans who wanted to know what was going on in the music industry. Or even outside people who were always interested in the mechanics of the industry. The other thing that prompted me to write this is that Frost was a very unique band, and we did a lot of unusual things, and we were always asked, and still continue to be asked, why did you do this album like this? Where did these ideas come from? And how exactly did you approach this? And so on. And there's also a lot of misconceptions because a lot of answers weren't there, and people made up their own stories how we did something. And that sometimes was very frustrating for all of us, and that I think we all felt that it was time that somebody put out the story the way it was, and obviously somebody in the band could do that best.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Now, a lot of people I heard you say that you didn't keep a journal of the time and you had to do a lot of research. A lot of people do keep a journal of the time, and they choose to keep it to themselves. They choose to share it with a few people. Why did you choose to publish this work?
There's two very different persons living inside of me. One person is the private Tom, who is extremely reclusive. I live an extremely reclusive life in Switzerland. I don't go to parties. I don't go out much. I'm very much by myself. There's the other Tom, the singer and guitar player, who's extremely exhibitionistic when he's with the band and when he's on stage and everything. Mm-hmm. And having all these stories and some of them really great stories and everything, of course I wanted to publish those. And in a way, publishing a book is a very reclusive way of dealing with these things. You write it down and people can read it, and you're still not in contact with them. They can read your mind, but you're not right there and you don't talk to them and everything. So I guess it kind of combines those two personalities.
Now, with the combination of the two personalities, did you find it hard to go out on tour and live the rock life?
I thought I would before Frost played for the very first time. I thought I would. I was extremely hesitant and scared before our first concert. I didn't know how I would handle it. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, being on stage with a great band, be it Frost back then or Apollyon Sun now, it's uncanny, but it transforms me. The adrenaline pushes me on stage, and I have a hard time getting off stage. I love playing live, and it's really weird because it basically goes against my personality. But it's like a drug. It's the drug. Since I don't use drugs, this is the drug of my choice. I love playing live, and when the house lights go down, I'm not nervous. I'm eager,
excited. Wow. Yeah. Now let's talk about some of the specifics of the book. You talk about the inception of Celtic Frost, and in the book you broke it down into like 6 main parts. How did you decide on how you were going to break the story up? I mean, I think you probably had it in your head, but when you started to put it down on paper, what were the determining factors in, like, say, the chapters of the story, or how did you break it up?
That was relatively easy because the very story of Frost did not happen in a continuous manner. It did happen in basically episodes. Mm-hmm. So it was relatively easy to choose choose the timing of the story in the book. I just followed basically how it happened. The only choice I had to make is how to start the book. Obviously, I didn't want to start with what would have bored most people, like my childhood. I didn't want to put that in the beginning. So the only real choice I had to make was which chapters do I put in the beginning. And of course, the most important album for Frost was In the Pandemonium. Before that, we were a total underground band, and that album really made us a household name in the hard music scene. So. And at the same time, it was probably the most scandalous recording we went through, and with the one with the most legal challenges and everything. So it was there again. It was a relatively obvious choice to take these chapters as the beginning of the book and then start the story in a chronological manner.
Can you tell me about the dedication of the book for Leonard Ott?
Leonard Ott is my grandfather who died in 1972, and I would not be the person I am nowadays without him. It's been a long time that he's gone, but he's on my mind every day, and I resemble him probably in a lot of things, and he remains an idol to my life.
Wow, that's interesting. I was wondering that, and I was also, I got the book a couple of days ago, and I've really kind of killed a big portion of the book. I mean, I haven't read the whole thing word for word, but I couldn't possibly read this whole book in 2 days, and but I did read a lot of it, and I noticed the way that you laid out the book. You actually have an index in the back of the book as well, which I felt kind of interesting. I was like, oh my gosh, I can look up, anything from Bon Jovi to Blue Oyster Cult, and you turn the page and you've got such things as Ronnie James Dio and EMI.
There's some very unlikely names in that index, isn't there, right?
Exactly. I mean, Halloween and Metal Blade Records and junk food.
It goes from Adolf Hitler to Halloween, which says a lot.
Exactly. I mean, Hitler's in here as well. I just saw that, and I found that was kind of interesting, and I was like, wow. It's put out on Sanctuary Publishing.
Right.
And which has they publish a lot of different works also in this same type of genre.
Yeah, they got books on the Beatles and Pink Floyd and whatever. They're very prolific in music publishing.
Exactly. The music of Elvis Costello and the biography of Iron Maiden and a bunch of different books as well. What I wanted to discuss with you now was your newest and latest venture, Apollyon Sun.
Right.
Tell me how that formed.
Well, when Frost terminated, it was by our own choice, but it did not mean that we had said all we wanted to say. We felt very much still unfulfilled, and we had Frost terminated for a number of reasons, but we still had so much energy in ourselves, and I always knew that one day I probably would return to music and continue this in a more contemporary manner. I was not mentally free enough to do that immediately. Frost was such an intensive time that I really did need some time off from the music scene. But by the mid-'90s, I ran into this guitar player from Switzerland who had a tremendous influence on my life because he was full of energy and he had the same ideas as me. And, of course, that's Errol, who now is my partner in Apollyon Sun. And we had these visions to take Frost's philosophy of being experimental and doing things that are not necessarily expected and that are kind of unique, and just put them into a slightly more modern vehicle than Frost was, because of course time had moved on too. Mm-hmm. And this really was the root of Apollyon Sun in the mid-1990s.
I'd like to play some Celtic Frost, and we'll come back and we'll talk more about your newest project and, of course, about your website. It's KNAC.com, thelattice.com, on the planet. Tom Fischer talking about his new book, Are You Morbid Into the Pandemonium of Celtic Frost? Here's a tune from Celtic Frost called Circle of the Tyrants. Pure Rock on the Net, it's KNAC.com. Celtic Frost, a tune called Circle of the Tyrant. Hey, you want to tell me about that song, Tom?
I was just blown away hearing these riffs. I mean, obviously I'm familiar with these songs, but I mean, I don't listen to them like every day, and then it's always amazing to hear. It sounds like a wall of sound. That was one of the key songs of Frost. It's probably the first so to speak, mass popular song. This wasn't a particularly special song for us. We just wrote it as part of an EP initially, and then the crowd reaction totally took us by surprise, and we never stopped playing this song till the very end of Frost.
We were on the phone and we were talking about Celtic Frost. I wanted to mention a couple of different things. First off, us stupid Americans here in the United States have a tendency to call the band Celtic Frost instead of Celtic Frost. Does it matter to you on the pronunciation or the enunciation?
Well, then count me in as a stupid Swiss man.
Do you call it Celtic or Celtic?
We formed the band as Celtic Frost, but once we had American members in the band, once we hit the States on tour, we started slipping back and forth because, of course, a lot of Americans said Celtic Frost. So we ourselves didn't really hold on to our own stand, and we said both to this very day. I probably slipped several times during this interview too.
Oh wow! So it's either or now.
Yeah, well, it's very legitimate to pronounce it Celtic in the States. When we formed it, it was Celtic Frost, but I mean, Celtic is so accepted. It doesn't really make such a difference.
Do you think it's accepted, or do you think it's the damn basketball team?
It is a damn basketball team.
It's like we see Celtic, and we automatically, our brain goes, Celtic. But in reality, when it, was formed in Europe, where we got our language from,
Right.
I would think that us stupid Americans, and I mean, I say that laughingly because our enunciation is, wrong on a lot of different levels. I mean, even from New York to L.A., the enunciation of coffee is different. You go park the car in the garage if you're in New York, and if you're in L.A., you're going to park the car.
Yeah, but you got to see. We were gladly sucked into that. We all loved America always, and we were made to feel so welcome here that we gladly switched to Celtic. There was no resistance from our side.
I can understand that as well. You're like, okay, well, even though they're dumb Americans, they still know our name.
I would never think like that.
I think like that.
I could name you like 1,000 dumb Swiss people that top every American. So
So we were talking on the phone as well about the weather back east right now, and you were saying that it was freezing cold where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, I'm calling from Washington D.C. and it's unbelievably cold.
Now, you're in Washington D.C. Are you going to go see some museums and stuff like that tomorrow? You were saying.
I'm trying to go to the National Air and Space Museum tomorrow, unless everybody in Washington D.C. hears that and waits for me tomorrow morning. But this is what I want to do. It sounds pretty pathetic, but I'm into aviation and space flight and everything. And living in Switzerland most of the time, I don't get to see this every day. As a matter of fact, last time I was there was on the road with Frost, so it's about time I go there again.
So you're into like rocket scientists?
Very much, yeah. I actually, in September, October, I was in Nevada at the Black Rock Desert north of Reno, flying rockets with some other people I know, and a lot of Americans. There's an experimental rocket launch once a year, and we brought 3 rockets from Switzerland, the longest being 10 feet long, and we flew them to like 30,000 feet.
Wow. I heard, I was watching TV the other day, of course, because I watch TV a lot, and I had seen somebody that was out in the desert, and they were one of these... It was a guy who was actually a high school dropout and turned into a rocket scientist, and he makes rockets that go out of the atmosphere and can come back to the Earth. It's like he's got like this record, and I found it quite intriguing. And then it's to find out that you were also into rockets, and just like a day and a half, 2 days later from me doing a little, hearing about all this rocket stuff, I was like, wow. And so I don't know anything about it, but I, had heard about it 2 days ago, which I found kind of ironic. And
it's actually become a quite big hobby. There's thousands of people also in overseas and everything, and everybody who does like experimental rockets, not just like kits that you buy in the store, but like their own projects, like ours. Everybody meets once a year on the Black Rock Desert, which in itself is an amazing area. Even if you're not into rocketry, when you drive out to that desert you drive like an hour and you're still not across the desert at very high speed. It's a huge area, and it has almost a philosophical dimension. And then, of course, you shoot something off at twice the speed of sound that you basically built with your own hands, and it goes so high up, sometimes even out of the atmosphere. It's just totally amazing, the experience. It blows your mind.
Wow, we were talking about your newest and latest venture, Apollyon Sun. Are you guys playing any shows here in the United States?
We were actually scheduled to play some actually by now, but we had a very significant contractual change in August. We're going to be with a different company for the second album. So this is a very good change for the band, but what the only disadvantage is, due to the change, we had to push the tour to next year. What we're doing right now is in Switzerland, we're in the studio working in the early stages on the second album. And once we have that finished, we'll go back on the road. We have played Europe and England so far, and the reactions were astonishing. It was much better than we dared to expect. We thought a lot of people just came to hear Frost or were very skeptical, but the acceptance was amazing. But I also have to say the band is very powerful live, very dark, and very close to Frost's power, so that probably helped a lot.
Will you be playing Frost material on the road as well when you eventually go out next year?
We're playing Hellhammer's Messiah currently in our set, and we also play Procreation of the Wicked in a new cover version from Frost. And
wow.
that second cover version is actually one of the first songs we record for the second Napoleon Sun album too. We feel it's actually a very strong track now, and we're certainly going to put it on the next album. And there might be a few other Frost songs that might pop up now and then too.
Sounds good. Now, also, you guys have like one of the most bitchin' websites I've ever seen for a band. The URL is CelticFrost.com. You guys have more information than anybody could possibly retain in a single sitting. Not only just news, but and bio information and album information and a statement and pictures and FAQ, and I mean the list goes on and on and on. How did you get all of this information? Were you a part of the making of the website?
Well, in principle, the internet has always been very important to us. Apollyon Sun as well. Since before we even had a demo in Apollyon Sun, we had a presence on the internet. As far as the Frost website goes, the real credit for that has to go to the webmasters, who are two American guys, Michael Lindholm from Washington State and St. Johnson from Nebraska. It is really mainly the work of these two guys, who are unbelievable researchers in Frost matters. They have worked tremendously to make this site what it is. And of course it ties in. The Apollyon Sun website is very similar in approach. Our websites are about information. We are frustrated when we log on to a website and there's like nothing, or it's neglected and you can tell the band doesn't give a shit. We think if you have this website, if you have this tremendous tool to provide the fans with information, use it. On the album, you have a limited amount of information. If a fan logs onto the website, he obviously wants to know more about the band. Mm-hmm. So give him that information. It's the direct link to the band. So in the case of the Frost website, once we had discovered this website, we contacted these two webmasters and we asked them if they were interested in becoming the official Frost website, and of course they said yes. And from then on we started exchanging a tremendous amount of information and photographics and everything with them, and this is how the page has developed so far.
Once again, if you're just now tuning in, I have Tom Fischer of Celtic Frost on the line, and we're talking about not only the band Celtic Frost, but his new project, Apollyon Sun. We're also talking about his new book that he wrote. It came out on, September 1st? Did the book come out?
I think so.
I think it came out on September 1st here in the States.
Yeah, that's possible. It's been a different date in every country, so you would have to ask the distributor, but I'm quite sure that's the date. It's out in any case. It's
out right now. And the name of the book, Are You Morbid into the Pandemonium of Celtic Frost? Now, one last thing before I let you go. You have an AOL chat this evening that you might want to, give all your fans.
Well, I'm going to be in the live chat with AOL 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
4 p.m. for those on the West Coast,
right.
And time appropriate, and even for the people in Europe. Now, one last thing before I let you go. I was, thumbing through your book, and I have to say that there's a lot of artwork in here, and there's a lot of great reading, and congratulations on your success in writing this book, and that's a great accomplishment, Tom. And as we here at KNAC.com, we give you the big high five on that. That's really cool.
Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. This book was very important to me, and to hear words like that mean a lot to me, honestly.
Wow. Cool. All right. Thank you so much for calling, and we appreciate it. I have a last Celtic Frost tune I'd like to play, Procreation of the Wicked. Would you like to talk about this song a little bit before I play it, or is there anything you want to say to anybody?
Procreation of the Wicked is not only one of our favorite songs for all of the members in Frost, and of course, obviously, I still play it in the Pine Sun, but it was also pretty much the first song actually written for Frost during a very early jam session and in the first week of Frost's existence. So it's a very significant song.
There it is. KNAC.com.